Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Cold Destroyers versus 2024 on the very last day of 2024. Finally going to put them in a list of the order in which I would like to get them. Purely a subjective list here, but I want to talk about which ships I would personally be going for right away. If I was to restart, if I was to get a brand new account, which ones would I be saving for? Which ones would I skip? That's what this video is going to be about. A little overview of each one and comparing them a little bit against one another, as there's quite a lot of overlap in these Cold Destroyers. We got 12 of them to take a look at here. A lot of gunboats, not very many torp boats, so we do have to keep that in mind as well. Personally, I'm much more of a gunboat enjoyer, so that will also impact my list. Feel free to comment down below which ones are your favorites. That way anyone looking for other opinions can get a little more holistic view, or just what other community members would prefer to get. And I think that's really important. Not is it just my opinion that matters, it's everyone's, and of course it's all subjective. This game has a lot of different play styles. People like to play it differently, and I think that's really awesome. One of the best parts about this game is just how many ships there are and how different they all are. There's going to be a ship that just does not sit well with me, but you're going to love it. There's going to be someone out there, and vice versa. There's going to be ships I love to play that others just really don't enjoy playing at all. And that's what's really nice about having so many different options here. You're not railroaded into one specific playstyle when playing World of Warships. There's a lot of fun here for a lot of different playstyles. So where else to start but the bottom of the list? Yes, we're gonna go back to front in this case. So gonna make you wait, do that good old watch time algorithm YouTube stuff for my favorite ones at the end. Although I will do chapters, so there should be ways to just do the scrolling at the bottom, and you'll see whatever ship you want to get my opinion on down there. But yes, Halford would be the least liked ship in my opinion. I don't like planes in this game. Welcome here if you're new, but those of you that have been around, that should not come as much of a surprise. The planes here are just fine. They're not even that good, to be honest with you, but the amount of spotting you can do is just crazy powerful. It's not a bad ship, I would say. The spotting is incredibly oppressive in this game regarding the aircraft. And so getting that on a destroyer is kind of crazy. These are tiny Tim's airplanes here, so you will be mostly crushing battleships with them since they do have a long prep time, or I suppose the lead on the rockets, the point in which you click and lock in your strike to when the rockets actually fire and land on the target is pretty long. So battleships are going to be the main target, as they won't be able to dodge, where destroyers certainly can. But against DDs, hey, you got the spotting ability here. This is going to be a bit like a Fletcher, although the guns are so much worse. You get one less of them, and the reload is incredibly long here. Very, very low DPM, small firing range as well. You only get one torp tube as well. So this ship really sacrifices a lot to get that aircraft. So for me, I don't have as much fun playing it. These torps are pretty good though, over 19,000 damage, 13.5 kilometers of range. That's very important. As we go through this video, you're gonna notice that torpedoes that get outside of radar ranges, I value very highly. It allows me to just use the torpedoes in matches where there are a lot of radar ships, where 10 kilometer, 8 kilometer torps are just very difficult to use. You have to rely a lot on Matchmaker not giving you those radar cruisers on the enemy team. So high damage, reasonably quick, but you only get 5 of them, so one launcher here. Decent reload. The ship is relatively quick here, and as for the build that I was running, bit of a hybrid build. Wanted to do some gun power, some torp power. The ability to spot for yourself with the planes and lock in a rocket strike while you're in smoke, spotting for yourself. That long time between locking in the strike and actually the rockets firing means you can spot for yourself. Even if the rockets don't land, they are in the vicinity of an enemy destroyer that's close. You get spotting for yourself. It's kind of crazy. It's a little hard to use though, and it's not my favorite ship though, certainly. As for the equipment, just relatively standard here. Definitely want to go Air Groups Mod 3. There's a lot of power in these rockets. And again, we are so compromised on torps and gunpowder that we definitely need to be getting a lot of value out of them. We could buff our torps some more. They'd certainly recommend a full torp build. Although guns. For me, I get more consistent results out of the gun. So I might want to swap to the main armaments reload. So yes, to the surprise of no one, the Halford does find itself down in D tier. For me, I'm just never going to get this ship. I think I have it on my main account, but I would not be buying this ship at all, even if I restarted. It'd be one of the last things I ever got for coal. Up next, we have a ship that's a bit of a meme, I gotta say. I thought this was much worse, actually, before I played it for this series. So I'm glad I did play through it, the Z44 here. The real problem is, on paper, you have tier 7 guns and DPM for a German destroyer. This ship also does not get a hydro. So at tier 9, that's kind of rough. But what does it get? Well, it gets 12-kilometer torpedoes. You get 10 of them. The damage is okay to bad, let's be honest. 13,700 is not great, but they're relatively quick, and look at that reload. 65-second reload. So as a torp boat, this Z44 isn't too bad. It still comes up pretty short, though, in my opinion, just because I prefer the hybrid boat torp boats a little bit more, as we'll see in a little bit. But also, just as a pure torp boat, there's another option that you might be interested in. Just a little hint there. 5.9 kilometer detect is nice and relatively good, although there's some other hybrid boats that have similar detect with much better guns around your tier. So you got to be a little bit careful of that. 38 knots is fine, reasonably quick. HP pool isn't bad though. German DD here has a decent HP pool. Definitely want to be going survivability expert. You don't have the gunpowder to really scare off some of the more powerful gunboats that might try and hunt you down. You don't have that radar, or sorry, the hydro and smoke gimmick to deter them either. So you gotta be a little bit careful there. So I'm actually giving up Swift and Silence to get the points available to me for survivability expert, as well as getting ourselves main batter and AA specialist. I do want that gunpowder. Not only does Swift and Silence nerf our reload on our main guns for that speed, but also we lose out on some points to further buff our reload. So in this case, we can either see it as a 5 or even 10% DPM loss if we're unable to take main batter and AA specialist for Swift, or we're losing out on a lot of HP. So for me, that's a tough trade to make. Although I will say, for a torp boat, you do want to be using your speed to get to flanks. And with this torpedo reload, it is devastating on a flank if you catch enemies pushing in. But for me, this is a lower tier ship as far as which ones I would like to get. But that said, it is better than the Halford. I would look at getting this ship eventually, personally. But if I'm interested in a torp boat playstyle, I would be interested in a few other ones here. And the guns are, as I said, very, very bad. I'm more of a gunboat player, so you're going to notice some of these torp boats slip a little further down than maybe they otherwise would. It really just comes down to torpedoes being a bit feast or famine, I suppose. For playing destroyers, they are incredible. Torpedoes are absolutely devastating when people push into you. We don't see as much of that these days, I would say, or at least it's harder to do. So I don't get as consistent results out of torpedo boats, and I much prefer the playstyle of gunboats. So for me, that's why some of these slip, like Jager, for example. Although this ship is a bit of a gremlin, I gotta say. It is very, very fun to play. Not to play against, but you can absolutely torture people with this ship. It is a bit of the... if submarines were removed from the game, Jager would still play that role of a submarine. It's just that annoying. The torpedoes are incredibly low damage, but they're fast and have a fast reload. So it's just constant non-stop torps that are incredibly difficult to dodge. Even if you have a hydro, they're so fast that a little bit extra warning isn't going to really help you all that much. This ship is also reasonably fast. It's not amazing, but it's reasonable. But the key here is going to be its concealment. 5.4 kilometer detect. Tied, I believe, for some of the best concealment in the game for destroyers, at least at high tier. Some of the Japanese DDs like Kagero, Yugumo also, I think it's 5.4. Maybe that one's 5.5. Shima's 5.6. Trying to remember these things on the fly. Probably not the best idea, but very good detect and incredible torpedo power. So yes, we're going to be buffing those torps. We could even buff them a little further with Swift Fish. Notice again, they're giving up survivability expert. The little triangle here is the recommended build. I would not do that personally. I really value this extra HP. Even still, we're barely over 20k HP. Yes, we do get the heal, which is very nice, but this ship does not come with a smoke screen. So there's no real survivability against carrier spotting or if you get caught out. So we definitely still need the healing for those situations. I would just prefer to have a little more HP, a little more safety net compared to those 5 knots of extra speed. They're already relatively quick, but that is up to you. Certainly full torp build here. These guns are not worth building for. They can do damage. It's not like you shouldn't use them in situations where you do get caught and are fighting a gunboat DD or something like that. They're still guns you should use. They have high alpha damage. They just reload relatively slowly, and you only get 3 of them. I suppose that is the problem with the Jager. But as for the torpedo power, it is immense here and is very, very fun to play when you get the right game. I just prefer the gunboats a little bit more. This is certainly one that will go much higher depending on if you enjoy torp boats. I can see this being all the way up in S tier very easily if you're that torp boat type of player. But for me, this one falls in B tier. It's just an average ship for me, personally. I know for the playstyle, it is way up high. But for me, I'm just not as big a fan of the playstyle here. So I am just going to put it in B. I would probably get it even over some of the higher up ones, I guess. It's so hard to rank these things, man, when I'm doing these lists. It depends on the day of what I'm feeling, I suppose. But I think middle of the road for my playstyle and what I like is fine for the Jager. Up next, we got ourselves the Neustrashimy. This ship kind of surprised me, actually. Again, it played better than I remembered, I suppose, when I finally came back to it. Especially given this ship's insane healing, super heal with this amount of HP. It's not a gimmick heal like lasting forever, like Lucian, for example. Reminds me a little bit of Lucian, though, with the 2-turret layout here. The guns are fine, but you only get 4 of them, so you're going to notice every once in a while, well, maybe more than once in a while, the guns do troll you a little bit on their dispersion. It is DD dispersion, but again, volume of shells certainly helps you out a lot when it comes to consistency in this game. The torpedoes are also quite good, only 10 kilometers of range, so gotta knock it down a little bit compared to the 12 that we see on Jager, things like that. But as a torp boat, it's not too bad. The damage is very high, and if you build for it, you can actually get the reload down pretty well. Notice, though, I do build for main guns, as I'm more of a gunboat player, someone who enjoys that playstyle quite a bit. But for tier 9, it is an absolute bully. Very, very high HP, and look at this concealment, by the way. For a ship that has decent gun power here, and insane survivability, having 5.6 detect is crazy. It is absolutely wild to see this detect on a ship like this one. It just lives forever and can take multiple engagements. That's the key here with a ship like Neustrashimy with so much healing. You take an engagement, you probably lose the trade in that one burst of engagement against a better gunboat, for example. But then you just pop your heal, and then you wait for your heal cooldown to come off, and you're ready to go again with another super heal available. And then you go back into a fight against that same DD, and you're at more HP than he has now. And then you take another fight, and again, and it just snowballs, basically. This ship allows you to take those bursty engagements. As long as you live it, you will come back with a lot of HP yet again. Very interesting playstyle to have here. It does get knocked down, though, not necessarily because I don't like this ship as much, but just the price. I haven't mentioned it yet because it hasn't been as relevant, but this ship is very expensive. It's like 296,000 coal. That's over 50k more than a lot of the other, even tier 10 coal destroyers. So you're saving a lot longer to get something like a Neustrashimy. The build here looking like this. There's so many consumables that Superintendent is absolutely amazing, including that healing, of course. And notice the lack of stock consumables. Something that they do every once in a while on these ships is you only get 2 heals base. So even though they're powerful, it is very nice to get extra. Also, only 2 smokes base. So you have to be a little bit careful if you're not running Superintendent, for example. but a very fun ship to play. You can even swap out the concealment for the range upgrade here, and you still have great detect. It's just over 6 kilometers, something like that, which is still amazing, and gives you the ability to play that more open water gunboat or longer range battleship farming gunboat, I suppose. And very forgiving thanks to that heal, which is very nice. It's just an expensive DD. And so for that reason, it does find itself just as an average coal DD, Neustrashimy. It is unique, certainly, but the price kind of counteracts that uniqueness, in my opinion. But this one could go a little bit higher. Certainly if you're interested in the Lucian playstyle, but since that's a dockyard ship and you're not real, it seems like they're not bringing them back. I really wish they would. I'm going to keep saying this, and hopefully Wargaming gets the ball rolling on that in the future, but it seems like they're very hesitant to do that. So Neustrashimy gets you kind of Lucian place. It's not. They are different ships still, but it reminds me a little bit of that, I guess. It is its own unique ship, though. And for our last ship in C tier, it's got to be the Alvaro. Yes, it is a very fun, especially unique ship, but I find there's just better gunboats available at its tier. The burst is really cool, though. If you haven't played with a burst ship, that would bump it up quite a bit higher, I think, just because it's so different to play with a burst fire, especially on a DD. Our concealment is decent here at 6.2. We're still using full conceal build, so we're not outspotting torp boats with better gun power like we might be on Neustrashimy, but still very potent ship here, and torpedoes have decent range. Okay damage, but the real problem here is going to be the speed. So really more of a zoning torp there, and you're more focused on gunfights. So a ship without heals can be a problem in that regard. We're against tier 10s now, of course, but look at that HP pool. Very, very high HP. That's going to help it out a lot. The HE and the AP in itself are very, very good for bursting enemy ships down. That also gives you a dispersion buff when you're using your burst fire. So not only do you pack all of your damage in a very short duration, but you're probably getting a little bit more damage than you otherwise would thanks to the dispersion buff, allowing you to really pinpoint your shells. This is a really useful gimmick, difficult to get used to, but as you know, someone is going into their smoke screen, they're about to disappear, quickly get that burst off. You pack a lot of damage in where enemies might not be expecting it. Also, if they're about to go behind an island, you're about to go behind an island, using the burst there is really powerful. Also, maybe to light a last minute fire as they're about to go out of your range, like of an enemy battleship, for example. Very interesting. Decent range here as well, allowing you to relatively comfortably farm those battleships, although you do want to be using your smoke generator. Since this ship can be a little bit large and take a lot of damage, there's no extra armor here. That's important to bring up, as some of the later gunboats that we'll see have a lot of armor or healing, for example. But that's what your HP pool at the start of the game is so valuable for. But no extra healing means you're punished heavily for mistakes you make. And if you take a 10, 15k chunk, which this ship certainly can if you get caught in the wrong spot, it does hurt your game quite a bit more than some of the other ships might, especially the ones with those heals. But this one certainly is a fun gunboat DD. I just don't like, or I don't enjoy this gimmick quite as much as some of the higher up gimmick gunboats, or even just the straight up more powerful gunboats. So that's why this one drops a little bit lower. I could definitely see bumping this one up. The problem here, guys, I'm finding is there's so many good gunboats in the coal destroyer list here that it felt bad to just have everything sitting in A&S tier. There's from B up, really, all of them are worth getting, in my opinion, which is really cool. It's really only 2 DDs that I just wouldn't really even consider getting. Pretty nice that there's good options for a lot of people here. So to start our journey into A tier for these coal destroyers, yes, we have a lot of them left and we're already in A tier. There's a lot of good ones. We got to go with the black, though. This ship is so expensive. Similar to Neustrashimy, that is what's bringing it down a little bit. This ship has incredible firepower alongside a radar. So smoke radar on a DD with solid gunpowder. It is an absolute menace in things like ranked, even in random battles, controlling caps. It's crazy to have this gimmick. We don't see it very often, although we're seeing it pop up a little bit more. So it's losing some of that little bit of spice that made it so unique back in the day. But still, 7.5-kilometer radar, lasts for 22 seconds, a little over with this build. So take in radar mod, so it doesn't last quite as long without it. But very powerful for contesting caps, killing off enemy destroyers. The problem is, once you've done that, it's a little hard to deal with those battleships at times. I mean, you can smoke HE fire spam them. But these torpedoes are, I mean, the damage is amazing. The range is awesome. But look at the speed, 45 knots. A lot of DDs can outrun those, which is kind of hilarious, actually. So very slow zoning torps, sea mines even, if you will. Very funny to land hits, though, with them. It's a fun ship to play full torp build, because I think you can get 3 launches of torps out before the first launch ranges out. So before that first launch gets to 13.7 kilometers, you're already launching the third set, which is hilarious. Don't recommend that build because, again, way too feast or famine based on people pushing into you, but it is funny to mess around with. Maybe not everything should be about being purely by the numbers optimal. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about just fun, messing around. But if you do want to play it a little bit more seriously, gunboat all the way with this ship, for sure. You even could fill the tubes and stuff. I mean, the reload's already fine. 96 seconds isn't particularly long considering we're not running any torpedo reload upgrades. So you could run some of that, but I really value getting the superintendent here. No heal, 21,000 HP can be a little low when you're trying to actively hunt out enemy destroyers. Compared to when Black was released, certainly the DPM of some of these gunboats has gone a little higher. So we want the extra smoke specifically for our survivability. And survivability expert, of course. So relatively standard build there, but Black is a solid DD. Much better in things like ranked, where you're going after enemy destroyers and you're rewarded for that more than random battles where, I mean, I guess I have an issue of getting into a mindset where I just want to farm damage. And with these torps, you can feel a little bit like you're locked out of games at times, at least once you've managed to kill off those destroyers and gain cap control. So that with that, we have the Black in A tier. It's still a very good ship, but it's a little compromised, so I wouldn't be interested in getting it as quickly as some of the other ships on this list. Yes, on to the Khaba. I had a tough time rating this one, or deciding where to put it on this list. A lot of these are very fluid in where they could be up or down, but I think with Khaba, it's really hard to ignore that the legendary upgrade makes this ship so much more comfortable to play as that open water gunboat in random battles. It can work very well these days without it, certainly still. That buffed heal is really, really nice. And this legendary upgrade here goes in the 5th upgrade slot and shortens your consumable action time. So you actually lose out on healing when you're taking this. So the buff to your range and your reload is very nice, but you lose out on survivability there. The extra range helps with your survivability. So it's not purely a straight upgrade module, but for me and how I like to play it, I really like this Khaba with the legendary upgrade. Otherwise, you'd probably actually go steering gears mod because 11-second rudder is so bad. In fact, I might actually do steering gears and not prop mod. That's dangerous because we're a large ship, and if we slow down and torps show up on our broadside, then we're just kind of dead. But 11-second rudder is so bad. There's some compromises here, no matter what build you're taking, really. But I can't ignore that these ships that have legendary upgrades that are very good for their playstyle, and the ones that I like to play, make them more expensive. And so because of that, I can't quite rate Khaba as highly as I might otherwise want to if you don't have that upgrade. It's still very, very good without it, though. Don't think you need to get it. Playing its steering gears and propulsion mod in the 4th upgrade slot is very, very strong, especially given this heal. The heal is very, very nice, especially without that legendary upgrade. As for the build here, we are definitely going for survivability and superintendent. So we're actually missing out on some DPM because of that. We could greed some more DPM out of it by giving up an extra heal and the heal and speed boost, or giving up survivability expert, but again, I like just how tanky Khaba feels, especially with this super heal type of thing. And it allows us to bully those destroyers out and even take some hits from enemy cruisers. We don't have the best detect here, so This is a very tanky ship, especially thanks to its armor. Yes, we have to bring up the armor, foreshadowing a little bit in Alvaro, but 50 mil plating. Yeah, you're shattering a lot of cruiser HE with that. Very, very useful. Even 25 mil deck armor, although you have a larger superstructure, so that matters a little bit less. But DD HE, cruiser HE, it's just going to shatter off of this. And surprisingly, battleship AP will bounce this. So, you know, I talked to you guys about at longer ranges, battleships probably want to shoot AP at destroyers. That way they're not hitting all these modules on top of the ship with the HE and doing next to no damage. It's surprising, but actually battleship AP at further ranges, when you can't guarantee hits on the belt armor or the hull armor of the ship, the HE can hit these modules and do very little damage, where the AP overpens will just do a little bit more, or more consistent. That's when ships are angled at longer ranges. But Khaba can just bounce those sometimes. Very, very funny interaction there. And no AP full pens on Khaba. Back in the day, it still had them, even after the change they made to almost all the other destroyers in the game. Khaba and I think Harugumo could still take AP full pens for a little bit after that change, but no longer. So no AP full pens here. So yeah, HE a little more viable actually against Khaba in that case, if you're a battleship player, especially when they're broadside, battleship HE will just go through this, sorry. But the AP will also do good damage. It's a relatively large DD, but fast and can be a little bit maneuverable at times, although nowhere near what those French DDs are like. And that's the advantage of the French destroyers. They dodge the incoming fire. They have that French saturation. Khaba's advantage is that it's still very fast, but it has armor and healing to help it survive. So very interesting to have both of those ships in the game. I like them both, personally, as far as just pure open water gunboat DDs. Khaba and Kleber are two of my absolute favorites in the game. It's just, for that playstyle, I really like the Legendary upgrade. So that's why it drops down to an A tier. Still very, very solid. If it had that built in, I suppose I might be considering putting it up in S tier for me. Yes, on to the Tromp. Perhaps one of the most gimmick-heavy ships or DDs on this list. And very fun to play because of that. This ship has a bit of a triple threat of offensive firepower. The guns are very, very solid. 650 millimeter guns pack an insane punch, relatively good reload, very good shell velocity, so good arcs, easy to hit things. And well, it's not the best open water gunboat because of its turret angles in particular, and it can eat a lot of damage because it's rather large and it's very slow. The guns are very good. You can't underestimate these. We get 5.9 detect, so very similar to some of those hybrid ships or even some torp boats. So very strong guns to be popping up at 5.9 kilometer detect on this thing. It will absolutely smash through a lot of gunboats at this tier. Well, you got to be a little bit careful which ships you pick a fight against on this one, I will say. But the torpedoes are also a threat. So 12 kilometers here, just matching the longer range radars at tier 10. But fast reload here, not very many of them. You only get 3 per side, but relatively quick reload. Pretty good damage too here, 15,000. Good velocity. The speed here is solid. So combining these guns, which can light a lot of fires, with these torps, which can flood a lot of ships, very, very nice. And what's the last one? Yeah, it's airstrikes. I know what I said about planes and Halford, but man, it's just fun to be a little gremlin airstriking people sometimes. It's fun to be the one playing the ship, I suppose. Even though it can be miserable to fight against. 48-second reload time on these HE airstrikes. They have a 12-kilometer range, 12-kilometer range on your torps, over 13 on your main gun. So notice everything kind of lines up at a similar range here. This ship used to have 10-kilometer range airstrikes, so it was a little bit unbalanced in that regard, I would say, to use these airstrikes. Sometimes you had to get a little closer than you wanted to do the open water gunboat thing, or closer than you needed to stay out of radar and use your torpedoes still. So getting these at 12 kilometers, I don't think the ship needed it, but it got it. And so these airstrikes are very, very usable. Notice, though, only 20 millimeters of pen on these HE bombs. So You're not penning any deck armor, cruisers either. So you have to be hitting superstructures. Although, if you manage to hit destroyers, yeah, it absolutely smashes them. This ship also gets very fast airstrikes. I guess I would say the lead time is not as bad. It's around 11 seconds, where Howden gets like 15 seconds. And then with the Prince that released last month, we got, or this month, if we're still in December when you're watching this, we have that one with like 17-second lead time. So these are easiest to lead, but they have a very small box. So it can be a little bit hard in that regard. But very fun to have 3 options to be using as your offensive firepower. So you're never really bored in a ship like Tromp, assuming you can stay within 12 kilometers of whatever target you have, which is really cool. The detection there certainly helps with that, but you're very slow. So you're going to be punished very hard for mistakes and misplays. Also, no smoke, no heal, no French saturation. You do have a lot of HP to start with, but much like Alvaro, which that one has a smoke at least, you get very punished for misplaying. At least you do have a fancy special engine boost, so you get some speed there on demand, but it doesn't last particularly long. So if you're going to open water gunboat in a bit of a dangerous area, or you need to, try and save your engine boosts for that opportunity. The ship wants to buff a lot of different things, so the build, I'm mainly focused on guns because, again, consistency. I personally like gunboats, but you could try and buff the torps a little bit more, get their reload down even further. Base reload of 70 seconds. Again, not taking any of the torp upgrades means you can reload those torps pretty fast, man. If you went for that build, could be very fun. I'm taking airstrike mod here as well to help out with that airstrike reload. So Tromp comes in at A tier here, still a very good ship to get, but maybe not quite the first ones I would go for. As for unique factor, it's up there. It's one of the most unique ships in the game, probably, certainly for cold EDs. So if you're looking for something weird and unique to play, Tromp is definitely it. And I couldn't quite do it. I couldn't quite put Hayate in S tier. I loved playing this ship. This is a really fun ship to play. I'm not a Shimakaze main. I don't like playing Shima very much because it lacks that firepower out of its main guns to really pressure enemy destroyers off of caps and areas of the map. Hayate has that firepower while retaining a lot of the torpedo pressure. So this you can think of a bit like a Japanese gearing, I guess. Maybe not the best comparison. They are still very different, but having really surprisingly good firepower here. Fast reload, high alpha damage, usable accuracy arcs, for example. Very, very nice to have. You still get 10 torps launched out that still have insane alpha damage, decent speed. Not the best to tech, but that's not too bad when you launch so many of them in a burst. And that's the key here. This ship has a torpedo reload booster. So while you don't have the 15 torp launches of Shima consistently, every once in a while, you get yourself a 20 torp launch while having way better gun power and way more HP. What's the catch? Well, the catch has to be your concealment. So that is the problem with Hayate. You have to be worried about your detection a little bit more. That's a trade I'm willing to make. I really enjoyed playing this ship. If you're interested in the Japanese torp boats, but you just don't like the guns on them, this one is one to go for. Very, very fun ship. And the 180-degree turn time, the turret traverse here is very solid as well, allowing the guns to just feel comfortable in that regard too. The reload's good. The range is good with this build. A little bit low range without the range upgrade on the commander. I'll show you that in a second. But very, very usable guns and torpedoes. You just have a little bit worse detect now in this case. So bit of a trade-off there, but one I will gladly make. I really, really enjoyed Hayate. This is the build that I was running, a bit of a hybrid here, so we're giving up a tiny bit of gun reload, but in exchange getting fill the tubes for pretty nice torpedo reload buff. You could even go for torps on the equipment slots as well to go more of a torp build on it, but for me, it's more about having the gun power and then a bursty torp salvo in those situations where I can use it. So I don't need to buff the torps quite as much. In fact, even saying that makes me want to swap fill the tubes for maybe main veteran AA specialist, or even just going superintendent, getting an extra smoke for just survivability purposes, allowing me to use one more smoke very aggressively or easily, where I wouldn't otherwise. Maybe I want to save it greedily for damage, but in that carrier game, just pop it, go undetected. Very easy. We still have plenty more smokes to go, and superintendent allows me to do that a little bit more, so maybe I'll go with that as well. Still not sure exactly on the build, but a very, very fun Japanese DD that plays more of a hybrid role than the Shima. And for someone like me who enjoys the gunboats a little bit more than the pure torp boats, I really like it. So because of that, this one rounds out A tier. A few more left though for S tier. These ones are ones I just love to play, man. They're so much fun. Great for farming credits, great for training commanders, always having a blast in these ships. And I will rate these S tier ones in order in which I personally would get them. So the rest of them kind of fall anywhere in their tier, I suppose. They can move around even up and down tiers, but these three, man, are absolutely incredible. So to take up third place, yes, it is Marceau. Maybe a bit surprising for some of you. I'm sure this one tops a lot of people's charts as far as the best coal destroyer. For me personally, I have said this a million times, or maybe not a million times, but anytime I'm talking about Marceau versus something like Sherman, it's always about which version or which part of the game do you struggle with more. Is it positioning your ship, or is it just the aiming of the ship? Which one do you want to deal with as far as brain power, using your brain to think ahead or to be focused on? Marceau is so fast that you don't really have to think about positioning all that hard, because you can just react to what's going on very easily. You don't have to think ahead too far because this ship just can move around the map so quickly. It has insane gun power. It's so much fun to play because of that. French saturation, decent HP, and the DPM is so high on these guns. You don't need a reload booster. You just have the DPM all the time, unlike the main line on the Kleber. But the shell arcs are terrible. So you got to be really locked in on your aiming when playing this ship to get the most out of it. Where something like Sherman, it's slow, it's clumsy, but the arcs are incredible. And because of that, I find it a little more relaxing. Marceau, I got to lock in a little bit more, be a little more focused. So for me, Marceau drops just slightly because of that. And again, very subjective list. I'm sure this one goes a lot higher for some of you, but very good HP. The torpedo tubes are a little bit worse in my opinion compared to the tech tree Kleber, just because they don't go as fast and don't do as much damage. If you're wanting to YOLO people, Kleber torps are so much better. If you're trying to torp people out from concealment range, these are still quite slow. So still not something I would want to be using all that often. It's just a gunboat with some close range torps in my opinion. But at least the extra range, 9 kilometers versus like 8 on the Kleber. Maybe it's 7? No, I think it's got to be 8 on Kleber. And the better damage on Kleber torps. I just value that a little higher on Kleber. Maybe I'm comparing to Kleber too much when I'm talking about Marceau. I should be comparing to these coal ships. But if I'm going to play a French DD, I personally would rather play Kleber, down to the gun arcs and the speed. You get to combine Sherman and Marceau. You get the gun arcs, you get the speed. You don't really have to think too hard. You just kind of can chill out and play a fun gunboat. Although that one you do have to think a little bit more about when you're using your boosters for DPM. Otherwise, the DPM is a little bit low on that one, I suppose. But decent detect here. I'm going for some concealment because I do like getting close with these guns and just massively out DPMing almost anything in the game as far as DDs go. And getting really close in to do that is quite fun. In fact, you can give up range build and just go brawler. You could even give up main veteran A specialist. You could give up consumable specialist. You could give up range. So give up these 3. Take RPF and fearless brawler and just sprint at whatever the RPF is showing you and go hunt destroyers. That's a very risky but very fun way to play as well. Less of a farming max damage way to play, but that can be a lot of fun as well. Very hard to do though, so be warned. But a lot of good players certainly better players than I at these French DDs can pull it off incredibly well. And it's a lot of fun to play, but very, very hard to pull off. So a bit more standard build here, a little more conservative is the kind of the way I like to play Marceau here, but very fun ship and well deserving of a top spot here as a coal destroyer. So that means the last two ships, what comes in first place? You'll know here in just 1 second. And I nearly put this one first, guys. I was actually very close to doing it, just based on how the list is arranged for me personally. But Groningen comes in second, which means Sherman is the one. Sherman's number one. We'll talk about that one a little bit, but for now, we got to talk about second place, Groningen. Why would I almost put this first? Well, it's tier 9, and tier 9 gets this wonderful thing of being an actual premium ship. Notice the ship icon here. It's gold with a gold wreath. That means the ship is a full-fledged premium. Gives you all these very, very nice benefits on the ship. We can see them here in the equipment tab. This gives us more credits, more credit income. It gives us reduced service costs. It gives us the ability to swap commanders in and out. It gives us a free permanent bonus for our economic bonuses here. Notice that right here. Very, very nice. And it gives us a permanent camo. But notice when we switch to a ship with the silver icon with the gold wreath, that's a special ship. They are actually distinct. There's 3 types. You got normal ships. Well, you get normal ships that are just silver everywhere. Elite just means you've grinded all the modules. But same thing. Silver ships, tech tree ships, really not too much special. Here we have special ships. Here we have premium ships. They do have distinct things about them. So if I swap over, notice we're missing something here. Yes, we are missing that credit booster income. So anytime you're thinking about grinding credits, you need to pick the one with the premium. More credits. We're missing this icon here anytime we swap over to these ones. Everything else is the same, but tier 9s earn more credits. And because of that, Groningen gets boosted massively. This ship has insane DPM. So if you're looking for a gunboat, which I personally really enjoy, Groningen is crazy. You have more DPM than a lot of tier 10 DDs, even ones that are focused on their guns. In exchange, you get no torpedoes, you get relatively poor concealment, and you're quite slow as well. So you can take a lot of damage. It doesn't have the most HP either, but the gun power is absurd here. And I find it very fun to play with such a powerful gunboat at tier 9. It earns monstrous amounts of credits. And if, again, we take a look at the tier list as if I was to start over, brand new account, what coal ships would I go for first? What coal DDs would I go for first? I'd probably want something to grind out credits because as a new player, you're credit poor. Anytime you're grinding through lines, you just burn credits, buying new ships, buying new modules, outfitting them. You need something to grind those credits. For me, at least for DDs, it would be Groningen. So I nearly put it first because of that, but I couldn't. Sherman is just too crazy. I just have a smile on my face anytime I'm playing that thing. But Groningen is very close too. Very, very fun to play. Also has that insane rainbow DPM of death that Sherman can give us. Groningen also has that ability. I play it very much as a long-range ship that has good enough shell arcs to farm battleships at 14.8. We could buff our concealment, but again, it doesn't get us good enough to really go cap contest things. I don't want to cap contest early. I'm just going to lose too much HP. So play a little cautious early, try and do a little farming, and then we pick our opportunity to push. But this ship does not get a heal either. So we got to use our smokes as our survivability. But you get a hydro as well, which is pretty cool. Always going survivability expert and then just DPM, DPM, DPM. But having a hydro, very cool. 5-kilometer hydro means some of the German ones, some of the other ones at your tier will outspot you, so you can't just go up to any smoke in the game and hydro them, but very powerful. Once you find the opportunity to do it, smoke hydro enemy destroyers, you just burst them down so quickly. An incredibly fun ship. Absolutely awesome firepower. Like, look at the reload, man. 1.5 seconds before any adrenaline rush. Insane. 10% fire chance. 10% fire chance. 1.5 second reload. Oh, man, does this thing farm? The AP is awesome as well into upper belts and that. Oh, it's so fun. It is such a fun ship. But yes, it is a fun ship. But that does mean there's one more. There is one more to fill out, and that has to be the Sherman. Man, what a silly ship to play this thing is. 3 guns is all you get, but 1.3 second reload, and that's before you buff it with Adrenaline Rush. You can get sub 1 second reload on this thing. Sure, sometimes that takes arms race, but if you have the special commander, if you have Halsey, he was on black in this case just for commander builds. I wanted to have a commander on each one for this video, but normally I'm swapping Halsey for sure. Get yourself a Confederate, which is not hard to do in a ship with this much DPM, and the ability to swap targets very easily. Yeah, that 20% reload buff is insane. We get 15 kilometers of range with this build here, so going for a bit of a range build. This is a very conservative looking one. Notice Superintendent here instead of swapping to main veteran AA specialist. I don't really want to go Fearless Brawler, although you can do full DPM build, give up Concealment and Superintendent for that. Full DPM is fun, but hard. Very hard to play. This ship is slow. This ship is kind of big, and you don't have a heal. So the extra HP is nice. You also get a smoke, but only 2 base. We already talked about that with Neustrashimy, but 2 base smokes is very punishing if you use one in a situation where you can't get much damage out of it. You're going to be locked out relatively quickly then. You got to be a little careful there. So getting up to 3 is really nice for survivability and just the comfort level of playing this ship. You already have insane DPM. But again, we could buff it further. The full DPM build is fun to play. So maybe not optimal in every circumstance, but that one game or two that you find, yeah, I run that build from time to time. It is very, 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 very fun. And yeah, for me it is Sherman still. And I just gotta say, man, there's so many good ships available for Cole, at least when it comes to destroyers. This is not the battleships where I'm just like, I guess you could get this if you want a battleship. But honestly, the DDs, a lot of these DDs clear any of the battleships available for Cole. It's kind of sad, some of the other classes, but if you like DDs, especially gunboat DDs, but there's some torp boat options here as well, Cole is awesome for you to be saving up, and it's not too bad. Just grab your daily containers, get more resources, and eventually you will get there. Play the game during events, combat missions, all that stuff. You're gonna get there over time, and certainly farm up to get some of these higher tier premiums just by playing the game. You don't even have to spend money, which is really cool. Again, I think anything B tier and up is well worth considering, well worth getting. C and D, I mean, Halford is just like, why do we have a DD with so many planes? How is it launching so many planes? You know, I don't want to bring realistic arguments into it, but it's just like, it's too many planes, man. And I know I put Tromp up here. There's some hypocrisy, I understand. And Z44 is just a bit too compromised for me. It's such a tier, it's tier 7, but give it okay torpedoes at tier 9. Hydro's nice too, but I mean, there's better torp boats. Jager is just hilarious. Neustrashimy has surprisingly okay torpedoes. Hayate as a torp boat. I mean, yeah. Hayate could easily... A lot of these could easily go up, man. There's just too many good ones. I managed to cover it. Barely by the end of the year. Coal destroyers. The coal ships. Well, I didn't manage to do a full coal ship roundup, but hey, maybe if you're interested in that, let me know. I could compare every coal ship in the game because I only went by their specific ship type. I think that was better though, because you probably know what you're interested in more. Do you want a DD? Do you want a cruiser? Do you want a battleship? So I think that makes a little bit better content, but maybe it is a good idea to round everything up. Or perhaps all premiums. That's a lot though. So keeping it a little shorter, although this video is probably already quite long. So I hope you guys enjoyed me yapping away at these ships, giving a little ranking video after playing them all in 2024. This is probably 2025 by the time you're watching this. So I hope the new year is going well for you. Happy New Year's, and 2025 should be a good year. I'm excited to continue making content on this game. Loving that. I have a blast doing it, man. Absolute dream job for me. And in August, it'll be 5 years. 2025 will be the 5th year of me making YouTube content. Absolutely wild. Could not have seen that coming. The consistency of it, just how people seem to love the content. And thank you, really. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate that a lot. Absolute dream job that you guys enable just purely by watching and enjoying the videos. So thank you. Thank you so much. And Happy New Year's.